Hey everybody, thank you for joining. We have an update here on the whole Kamala Harris VP situation. So we're going to get into that right now and a couple other things in this live stream as well. But I want to start off with the situation that is happening as far as the VP race is concerned. So we do have new reporting. This comes from Bloomberg, and I do have to make this caveat up front that any reporting that we see, take with as much of a grain of salt as you feel necessary, because obviously we'll find out what she's actually going to do when she actually does it. The reporting could get it wrong, but I'm just going to give you what I've read thus far, and we can make our own determination about that afterwards, but I want to at least give you an indication of what the reporting is showing as of right now. So let's switch over here. So right now, Bloomberg is reporting that Kamala Harris's VP search, the Veep stakes here, are down to 3 names, and the names that they give are Mark Kelly, Josh Shapiro, and Tim Walz. So I want to talk about these names, and I want to talk about the other names as well, and just kind of have a rundown here of what I think the pros and cons of each of them are. But what I'm going to do right now is, before we go into this, I'm going to start a poll. And I want you to tell me who your top choice would be before we go into the pros and cons, and then we're going to do a poll afterwards, and then we can discuss who you think your top choice should be then. So we're going to do one poll here for those watching, who you think the VP choice should be. And we're going to include just these 3 names that are listed in this Bloomberg reporting. So the names are going to be Tim Walz, Mark Kelly, and Josh Shapiro. And that is now available in the comments section for those who are watching live. If you're watching this after it's live, then you won't be able to vote, but we can still discuss it anyway. So as of right now, for the people who are watching live, the 3 options in this chat are Tim Walz, Mark Kelly, and Josh Shapiro. So if you're one of the people who are watching right now, please head over to the comment section and make sure to cast your vote with who you think the VP pick should be for Kamala Harris, and try to vote quickly, because once we get into the pros and cons, I don't want to alter your vote based on what we go over here. So try to get your vote in right now. I'll wait like 30 seconds or so, and for everybody watching, please head over to the comment section. Also, if you want to participate in the comments section, the chat, please make sure to subscribe to this channel. The chats and the comment section are subscribers only. It doesn't cost you anything to be able to subscribe, but it's a great way to just be able to participate and also to support these live streams, which of course will always be free. So, okay, while you're voting on that chat, while you're voting on that poll, let's go over what I think the pros and cons of each of them are. So I think the top name that we've heard put forward thus far is Mark Kelly from Arizona. The pros of Mark Kelly: he is an astronaut. It's a pretty damn big pro. Hard to run against an astronaut. Hard to do anything against an astronaut. That's a pretty damn solid resume builder right there. We also know that he can win in a swing state. He's done it in Arizona. Not exactly an easy state for a Democrat to win, but he was able to win there. He is a great candidate to appeal to moderates, which is especially important because the coalition that Democrats are building right now is a coalition that will not just include Democrats, but will also include independents and pro-democracy Republicans. Also, he's hawkish on the border. This is something that could help him where Kamala Harris is perceived to be weakest. Republicans are trying their level best to pin the whole border czar situation on her. It's not sticking thus far, but still, that is an area where not just Kamala, but Democrats more broadly are weak. Mark Kelly is a senator from a border state. He, again, has been hawkish on the border, so it would kind of allow him to pick up the slack in the one instance where we have a vulnerability. Those are the pros. The cons of Mark Kelly: we need him in the Senate. It's, again, a very important seat. The Senate is generally split 50-50, 49-51, so it would be a major loss to lose him in the Senate. In the event that Kamala Harris did pick him as vice president, the replacement for Mark Kelly would be chosen by the Democratic governor, Katie Hobbs. So that replacement would be in the Senate for 2 years until a special election was called in the next midterm cycle, which is 2026. That means that there would be a special election in 2026 to fill the seat temporarily until 2028, in which case there would be another election to permanently fill the seat. What that means is that we would be facing two elections where there would be uncertainty because this is automatically a tough seat that shouldn't be. Like 2026 wouldn't happen if Mark Kelly was still in the seat, and 2028 we'd be looking at a very popular Arizona incumbent Democratic senator in Mark Kelly, who it would be assumed that he would go forward to actually win. So those would be the two vulnerabilities, and he might be replaced by a Democrat who we're not sure could win in a general election contest, because that person would be untested in the way that Mark Kelly is tested and was able to win. Also, I would add that Arizona is not as winnable as Pennsylvania if we're talking direct electoral impact here. So if our priority here is to find somebody who could confer some electoral advantages, then is Arizona the best state, for example, or is a state like Pennsylvania easier to win where we have someone like Josh Shapiro? And so that's a consideration as well. So those are the pros and cons of Kelly. Let's move over to Josh Shapiro. The pros: he is an extremely popular governor of Pennsylvania, which, as we all know, is a must-win state. It is very likely one of, if not the tipping point state, meaning if we find out that Pennsylvania is the closest, then if we win that state, that will be what puts Kamala Harris over the edge in terms of 270 electoral votes. It may be Michigan, it may be Pennsylvania. We have to see how the polling actually shakes out. He is young and dynamic. He is an excellent speaker. If you haven't heard him speak, I would definitely recommend checking out some of his speeches. He will be replaced by a Democratic lieutenant governor if he's chosen by Kamala Harris, and in a safer blue state than Arizona, at least, then it's not a big loss to Democrats, because it's easier in theory to replace a Democratic governor in a state like Pennsylvania than it is a Democratic senator in a state like Arizona. So those are the pros for Josh Shapiro. The cons for Josh Shapiro is he has been an outspoken supporter of Israel at a time when Kamala Harris may be seeking to distance herself from Biden's baggage as it relates to Israel and Gaza, which is not to make any commentary one way or the other on Josh Shapiro's position, but it is a consideration as the Israel-Gaza stuff has plagued Joe Biden, and as the fact that he has dropped out has given us a rare opportunity to relinquish all of that baggage, which has had a pretty cataclysmic impact on the Democratic base. That might pose something of an issue for Josh Shapiro. So those are the pros and cons of Shapiro. Let's go to Tim Walz of Minnesota. The pros are that he is appealing to Midwesterners. He's appealing to moderates. He's been an extremely effective surrogate on the campaign trail. He's like, a lot of people don't know him. I would imagine that his favorables far, far, far outweigh his unfavorables. He is an extremely likable, extremely approachable person. He's effective at making the case for Democratic policy and not apologizing for it. As governor, he oversaw the implementation of a very progressive Democratic agenda in Minnesota, and he's really good at making the case as for why that is good policy nationwide. I mean, he's been on TV all weekend basically doing exactly that. So this is somebody who leans into a Democratic agenda, which I think is a plus, as opposed to trying to make excuses for it, which, by the way, I would add, in fairness, everybody on this list thus far, I think, is in the same boat on that front. The cons, in my opinion, is that Tim Walz doesn't have the same direct appeal in some of these must-win battleground states as Josh Shapiro might have in Pennsylvania, as Mark Kelly might have in Arizona. So we may be sacrificing an opportunity with a popular governor from Minnesota, but from a relatively safe seat, in Minnesota, as opposed to taking advantage of a popular Pennsylvanian or a popular Arizonan who might confer some electoral advantages in those specific states that we might not get from anybody else. If we need to win Pennsylvania, for example, and we have somebody like Josh Shapiro who's overwhelmingly popular, we might not get that same appeal from someone like Walz. So those are my pros and cons that I tried to think through and put together and give like an objective read of what I think is the situation here. I do want to add, because, again, we want to take any reporting that we read with a grain of salt, that this may very well not be the final list. This is the list that was put forward, so I just wanted to do a bit of a thought experiment on those three options. It's also worth talking about a couple of other people. Andy Beshear, for example, is a name that's popping up a lot, the governor of Kentucky. Pros of Andy Beshear is that if he can convince a state like Kentucky to vote for him, then he clearly has bipartisan appeal that may extend far beyond the borders of Kentucky. And again, if we need, white, moderate swing voters, pro-democracy Republicans, conservative Democrats to be able to vote for somebody, Andy Beshear might be just the person to reach out to those people in those states. The cons is that we will almost assuredly lose the governorship in Kentucky. I mean, he is, there aren't a lot of people who can win in a seat like that. He had been able to, but that kind of thing doesn't really extend to other politicians quite as easily. And Kentucky really isn't a battleground where his candidacy would directly help somewhere. It's not like suddenly Kentucky would be on the map. Democrats are still going to lose Kentucky in 2024. So I don't know that he has the same direct electoral benefit that someone like Mark Kelly or Josh Shapiro might have in their respective states. It's also worth talking about Pete Buttigieg. Look, anybody who watches my channel knows I'm a fan. Pete is a killer. He can absolutely run circles around any opponent, left, right, and center. He has an amazing track record to actually run on as the Secretary of Transportation. He's been crisscrossing the country, launching more projects as the result of the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law than I think any other human being in modern American history has launched. Also, the Buttigieg-Vance debate would be nightmare fuel for Republicans and basically my version of the Super Bowl. So I think that everybody would tune in to something like that. The cons, of course, are, again, no direct electoral benefit in a certain state. Pete is from Indiana. Democrats are not going to win Indiana. And there's also the question of the fact that, Pete's gay. And I actually spoke to Sarah Longwell from The Bulwark about this exact issue. And so I'm going to play a quick clip because I asked her whether she thinks that his sexual orientation is going to have any impact on Americans' ability to be able to vote for someone. And I want to play a clip from what she said.
So here's the thing. I absolutely believe that America isn't ready for anything until you make them ready. And a lot of the ways that you make them ready is with a person. People are always like, are they ready for a black woman? And I'm like, that's not the question. The question is, are they ready for Kamala Harris? And who is Kamala Harris and what is she showing them? And I think the same thing stands true of a gay candidate. Here's my thing, though. I think that America could absolutely elect a gay vice president. I think they could elect Pete Buttigieg as a vice president. I'm not sure you can do a gay vice president and the first black woman all at once. I just think that's what people are reacting to. That being said, I don't know. I would not, if she picked Pete, I would not be unhappy about it. I'm not sure that I think it is I don't know that it's optimized for victory, which is I think what people are going for is like, let's take the best absolute shot we can. But could it still work? It could, because he's amazing.
Now, so that was the conversation there. I tend to agree with her. I think that the same thing happened with Barack Obama, for example. America wasn't ready to elect a black candidate until we were ready to elect a black candidate, and we did exactly that. America wasn't ready to elect a woman, for example, and here we are with a woman at the top of the ticket that Americans are very, very clearly amped up about, and we've just had well over 100,000 new registrations as the result coming from vote.org. The vast majority of them are young people. 80% of new registrations are coming from people between the ages of 18 and 34. So again, that kind of explains that situation. So that's where we are right now. So with that said, I tried to give some options there in terms of Walz, Mark Kelly, Josh Shapiro, and then I threw in a couple of others because I think it's worth keeping them in the conversation because we don't know whether this reporting is absolute. So I do want to keep, not just take the reporting as gospel and kind of ignore our own thoughts on this matter, which I think are totally valid. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to end this poll. So the poll, I'm going to write down the results that we've had thus far. And we're looking at Walz at 20%, Kelly at 43 and Shapiro at 37. So Mark Kelly, the runaway favorite, then coming in at second is Josh Shapiro, and then Tim Walz. So after that list, I'm going to start this poll again, and I want to see how the numbers change. So we're going to go Tim Walz, Mark Kelly, and Josh Shapiro. If you are watching right now, please make sure to vote in this new poll. For those who are watching live, you're able to vote. If you are watching after the live, you won't be able to vote or see the poll in the chat anymore, but I'll give you an update as soon as we have it. We have about 20,000 people watching live right now, so hopefully we'll have a pretty solid sample size in terms of the actual results on this poll. We had 14,000 votes, by the way, in the initial poll, so that's a pretty solid sample in terms of what this poll is going to look like. In the meantime, while people are voting, for those watching right now, if you want to support this live stream, if you want to support the work that I do, and I'll try to do these live streams more frequently because I think that they are helpful, and I think it is helpful to actually have the opportunity to directly respond to questions. If you're not yet subscribed, please make sure to subscribe to this channel. That's the best way to support what I do. It doesn't cost you anything. I will never put my YouTube content behind a paywall. Simply subscribing is all I would ask for. Generally, we have about 50% of the viewers in these live streams who are not yet subscribed. So if you're one of the people who are watching right now who is not yet subscribed to this channel, and you want to support me, again, completely free, please make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much. Okay, so that is my thoughts right there on that issue. I do want to go over, while we're speaking about the VP situation, I do want to talk about JD Vance. There is something that caught my eye as far as JD Vance is concerned was, there is a lot of talk right now about how JD Vance is, for lack of a better phrase, shitting the bed, and has become the subject of complete, absolute ridicule online. A lot of what he said is just batshit crazy. Dude is a weirdo, and that really that's really not helping him in this campaign. He keeps saying awkward things. He keeps doing weird things because he's like a weird extremist, far-right, Christo-fascist, and it's not exactly doing him any favors. And so I want to show you the intro that he got with Trey Gowdy on Fox News. And keep in mind, this is the intro to an interview that he did on Fox News. And this is what Gowdy had to say.
I've watched that interview many times, and you should too. And you should too, in full, and draw your own conclusions. When that interview surfaced, two things leapt to my mind. Those of us who talk for a living make mistakes. We say things that in hindsight we might phrase differently or better or not at all. And then I thought about a stormy day at Reagan National Airport where I met two women desperately trying to get home to South America. I was trying to get home to South Carolina. We spent the whole day together, finally making it to Charlotte, and then somehow we got them on a flight to Houston. They were headed to visit family in South America before returning to their new home called America. And when we parted ways, they said they'd like to pray for me as their way of saying thanks for the day spent together. And I assured them it's too late to help me. But I do have a friend who's expecting, and she got some tough news about her unborn child. Would they please pray for her instead? And they did, and they still do to this day. They're Catholic nuns, childless, dedicated to God, love this country, living lives of service to others. And it's not just Catholic nuns. Some of the finest people I know don't have children. Teachers and guidance counselors and lawyers and doctors, and they love other people's children enough to teach and guide and protect and minister to them. Some people choose not to have children. Others desperately want them, but they can't. In a moment, we'll speak with Senator JD Vance. We have never met before, but we have many friends in common who tell me that he is smart and he is talented and he is more than capable. None is perfect, no, not one. That's what the good book says. And the American people are forgiving if we ask.
So obviously a pretty loaded intro, not exactly the friendly Fox News intro that someone like JD Vance, who is Donald Trump's running mate, is normally afforded. So JD Vance has been in the news lately because part of his whole weird thing is that he has he's been on the attack against single people, basically claiming that he wants to confer tax advantages to people with children. And this is part of the right basically shoving their theocratic edicts down everybody's throats and deciding that everybody needs to be have a heteronormative family structure, nuclear family, mom, dad, 2 kids, like whatever it is. And if you don't have kids, you should be dinged as far as taxes are concerned. And if you do have kids, you should have more voting rights, for example, because you have more of a vested interest in what the future is going to look like. And of course, people without kids can't possibly have any interest in the planet that they're living on or any of the other financial implications because we have no kids. And so screw those people. And so that was a 2-minute windup to a JD Vance interview on Fox News, where he basically just leaned into the fact that this is a crazy position to take, not just from a campaign's perspective. Generally, you don't want to wage war on single people in the lead up to a general election, but also because this is somebody who if you're not getting really nice treatment, red carpet treatment on Fox News, then where are you going to get it? And so a lot of people are, of course, asking the question, does this mean that Donald Trump might ultimately dump JD Vance? And I spoke with Mark Elias, the nation's premier voting rights attorney, on this channel about exactly that question. So I want to play a clip for you for what Mark Elias had said on that exact issue. And again, to be able to watch more episodes of Democracy Watch, which is my show with Mark Elias, please make sure to subscribe to this channel. Again, completely free, but a great way to be able to keep up with these conversations. I only have a few shows, and I make sure that my co-hosts on these shows are absolute experts, total pros, and it does not get better than Mark Elias. General electorate right now, can Donald Trump have JD Vance replaced? Are there any rules that prevent choosing a new VP candidate after they're officially nominated at their convention?
I mean, this guy has had the worst rollout of any candidate ever. I don't even just mean vice presidential candidate.
Yeah.
I mean, it is hard to imagine a worse pick for Donald Trump, who has done worse as his initial impression. I mean, let's set aside the fact that his policies are bonkers and the fact that he is attacking women who have cats. I don't even want to talk about what if you search on Twitter these days, you find about JD Vance.
Yeah.
But no, there's no way to get him off the ballot. There may not even be a way to get him off the couch. Okay, but let's just stick with the ballot. Like, he is now the Republican nominee for Vice President of the United States. That paperwork the Republican National Committee has submitted to the states. He's on the ballot. Now, if he died or if he was incapacitated, some states allow for there to be a swapping out. There are some states that would say, that even if he just turned out to be a total embarrassment and withdrew, he could be replaced. But Donald Trump has no more power to kick him off. Like they are stuck with this guy, and I'm pretty sure that he's not leaving the ballot or the couch.
Well, what if, for example, just to game this out for
You're
a
just
moment,
not going to react to that.
to the couch. I will abstain from reacting to the narrative about what JD Vance may or may not have done with his couch. That's between I'm firm on this position. What happens between that man and his couch is up to him and his couch, and I, unlike Republicans, don't want to get in between any sexual fantasies between a man and his loved ones. I'll leave it at that. That's my diplomatic response. Just to game this out for a moment, what if JD Vance himself seeks to step aside, to drop out?
Yeah, like I said, then you get into this matrix of time and reason, right? So the earlier he decided to drop out, the more likely it is that some states would allow him to drop out and be replaced. It obviously gets progressively harder as you get closer to the election because ballots get printed, ballots get sent out, right? And so one of the things is when does it happen? The other question is, what's the reason for it happening, right? At one end of the spectrum, if he dies, and, I hope he doesn't. I mean that seriously. Like, I don't wish any ill on him. But, if a candidate dies, then a lot of states have permissive rules in that circumstances. Someplace below that is like incapacitated, and below that is just like, I feel like I'm a laughing stock and I no longer wish to run. The fewer states, right? Because it is a burden to the state after the candidates have been certified and the ballots have started to be printed. Now, in fairness, the Democratic National Convention hasn't taken place yet, so they have not yet had to submit their nominee. So ballots haven't yet started being printed. But JD Vance, so I'm going to give you this advice. You're really not popular. And there's probably nothing you can do about that, but just like sit on like a straight back chair. That's my advice.
Okay. So that is Mark Elias's take on this issue. Again, it does not look like they will be able to replace him, but that's not to say that they might not try and that certain states might not allow it. So it remains to be seen. I think that if we can get to the point where the Democratic National Convention actually happens, it'll be much more difficult, because then people start, once we have the official Republican nominee for president and vice president and the Democratic nominee for president and vice president, then we start printing ballots. And then it's going to be damn near impossible to be able to swap anybody out, barring some illness or death or something like that. And I think in that case, there would be insurmountable legal challenges that JD Vance would face. But on its face, it looks like right now that, as far as Mark Elias is concerned, and he's generally the authority on issues like this, it does not look like they will be able to dump JD Vance, no matter how much of a burden, an anchor he becomes on that ticket. So it remains to be seen what happens on that front. Let's take a look at the poll right now. We are looking at a little bit of a creep upward for Josh Shapiro and a little bit of a creep downward for Mark Kelly. Right now, the poll is exactly the same for Tim Walz. So this second poll, it looks like Tim Walz is at 20. He was at 20 in the first poll. Mark Kelly was at 43 in the first poll. He's gone down to 41. Josh Shapiro was at 37. He's up to 39. I'll let this poll go just a little bit longer, but it looks like after we went through our list of pros and cons, that it changed the vote total about 2 points in Josh Shapiro's favor. So again, you can go ahead and keep voting so that we have an identical sample size here, but it will be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. With that said, I do like to give you the opportunity now. The whole point of these live streams is to answer some questions that you have. I mean, generally, I'm just doing my own videos where I can talk about topics that I think are important, but I think it is important to have the opportunity to talk directly to you. So if you have questions, please throw them in the chat. The only way that you will be able to participate in the chat, very easy. You just have to subscribe to the channel. Again, doesn't cost you anything to be able to do that. Just hit the subscribe button, and then you'll be able to partake in the chat. So head over to the chat. Make sure to tag my name by writing @BrianTylerCohen, and then I'll be able to see your questions, and I can answer them from there. In the meantime, I will allow this poll to keep going so that we can have a full sample size. I'd like to get between 15 and 20,000 responses so that it's at least somewhat valid here. So I will wait for the questions to come up in the chat. For those asking me to discuss Pete and Andy Bashir, I did earlier in this live stream. So you can just scroll back a little bit. I went through Mark Kelly, Josh Shapiro, Tim Walz, Andy Bashir, and Pete Buttigieg. So all you have to do is just scroll a little bit earlier. I went through all of the pros and cons of all of them and tried to give a really in-depth, objective view of the pros and cons of everybody there. So I'm getting the question, as I understand it, Republicans can't drop JD Vance, right? As I understand it, they cannot drop JD Vance. That is not to say that if they want to, that they might not try, and that certain states wouldn't be willing to allow them to do that. Everything, as we've seen, is kind of up to legal interpretation these days, and nothing really seems tethered in any type of precedent or reality, really. So I don't want to definitively say no. Mark Elias had said no, but gave some qualifications and basically said that that's not to say that certain states might not allow it if Donald Trump tries to do it. But generally, it seems like it is absolutely unlikely, an uphill battle, and definitely ripe for litigation if they do try it. Again, as far as I believe, I think that if we get to the point where, the virtual convention for Democrats is going to happen, I believe, on August 7th. If we can get to the point where August 7th, where Kamala Harris and whoever she picks as VP are formally nominated in that virtual convention, then it's pretty much a done deal. Then ballots start getting printed, and they're going to have a lot less leg to stand on if they do try to swap him out. Do I think it's going to take until the 7th to hear a decision on VP? I think it would be smart to at least wait it out a little bit, because every day that we don't have a decision is a day that we can keep talking about the virtues of Democratic candidates. And also, Kamala Harris is benefiting from a ton of organic engagement right now. Everybody's talking about Kamala and the prospect of her VP and her policies, and no one's really talking about Trump. So we don't need the gift that would be another news cycle. I think we should wait for a moment where maybe some of the enthusiasm tamps down, and then we just need another bump. We just need to re-up some enthusiasm, and I think we can get that with the VP announcement. But, there's a reason, for example, that after Donald Trump's assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, he allowed that news cycle to ride, and in fact didn't even announce a VP until Monday, just before the convention. It's because he didn't need to. He already had all the attention. He had already had all of the sympathy, and so he just kind of rode that wave, and there was no need to bring sand to the beach, right? He already had all the organic earned media, and so why not just kind of revel in it? And then when you need a bump a little later on, which ultimately ended up being Monday, that's when he announced his VP. So I think for right now, it would be smart, seeing how much enthusiasm Kamala Harris has right now with all of this earned media and all of this organic engagement, just ride that out. Don't announce a VP yet. Wait until things slow down. Maybe Donald Trump takes over the news cycle. I know he announced that he was desperately trying to claw back some attention by holding another rally in Butler so that he can wallow in his own victimhood and fillet himself some more, like he did at the RNC by talking about how, he's the ultimate martyr for the Republican Party. But that might be a good opportunity to steal back the attention from Donald Trump with a big VP announcement. There are a lot of media implications for all of this, and you have to be smart strategically about when you want to announce, when it's going to have the biggest bang, and when it can pull some eyeballs off of the other guy. And so long as Kamala Harris has eyeballs on her, she should benefit from that, just to the point where she might need a little bit more of a bump. So I do think that we'll wait a little bit to hear about a VP, but my guess is, let's see, today's July 28th. I would assume that if not this week, maybe the beginning of the week of August 5th. That's what I would assume. Maybe August 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, something like that. That's what I would probably assume. So, but it can happen anytime. Look, I was, when Joe Biden announced he was not running for re-election, I was definitely not prepared for it. So, who knows when this stuff can happen. Who do I think scares Trump and his campaign the most? I'm assuming that question is with regard to VP picks. Honestly, I think any of them would. That's honest to God truth. I think that if you look at somebody, if we're going to take the list that's on this screen right here, and we talk about Kelly, Shapiro, and Walz, any of them, they are all effective communicators. They are all very appealing to moderates, to independents, to pro-democracy Republicans. They all have strong records to run on. Two of them confer electoral benefits in swing states, and that's obviously Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania and Mark Kelly in Arizona. But that's not to say that all three of them wouldn't be electorally viable in all of the battleground states. So I don't think that there's one person that's particularly scary. I think that all of them, because we have such a deep bench of very effective, very, very charismatic, well-spoken, articulate, and accomplished Democrats, that's going to be what's especially scary to the Trump campaign. If Donald Trump does replace Vance, so again, we were talking about the prospect that this is highly, highly, highly unlikely, and Mark believes that it's not even allowed right now. But who would replace him? I mean, at that point, then you're looking for some Republicans who fulfill seemingly contradictory jobs, which is that they are loyal enough to Donald Trump that if he ever tried to overturn another election, that they would do something that they are constitutionally unable to do, and that is to basically anoint him the winner of an election that he loses. So they have to be extreme enough to do that, and yet somehow also palatable enough to some subset of the electorate for whom Donald Trump alone is too extreme. And so how do you find that? How do you find somebody who's extreme enough for Trump to choose, who would do his unconstitutional bidding, and yet still not too extreme to be viewed as an extremist by the electorate? If that's a Venn diagram, I don't see how there's any intersection in those two things. I think in Trump's warped mind, he might look at someone like Marco Rubio and say, okay, he's more of an establishment figure, and so we'll get some buy-in from some moderate Republicans, and also he is a minority, and so just by virtue of sticking Marco Rubio on the ticket, we can get some buy-in from Hispanics, Latinos, that community right there. I don't think that's how it works. You just put a brown person on the ballot and then all of a sudden you have support from all the brown people. Like, I don't think that's how it works. But in Trump's warped mind, I think that he would believe that that's how it works. But again, I think the likelihood of him dropping Vance as with every day that goes by is lower and lower and lower. And remember, they already accepted the formal nominations. So we are looking at extreme litigation in the event that they do try to do something like that. This is a good point too. I just got the comment that, let me see, I think I might have just lost it. That, well, I'll try to just characterize it. That we're all talking about the prospect of Trump dropping Vance, but has there been any indication that Trump himself would want to drop Vance? And the answer to that is I don't think so. I think that I think this may be us kind of manifesting our beliefs and views onto Donald Trump by saying that he regrets it. And I do believe down to my core that he probably does regret it. Even Ben Shapiro came out today and said that, today or yesterday, and said that Donald Trump probably does regret picking JD Vance. But we don't have any formal indication or overt indication that Donald Trump does regret picking JD Vance. Am I concerned that a prominent Democrat may go rogue and run for president? No, not in the slightest bit. I think Democrats have displayed a shockingly uncharacteristic degree of unity in record time, in like the fastest amount of time that I've ever seen. Invite Nikki Haley onto your podcast. I think I would have better luck inviting Henry VIII onto my podcast than Nikki Haley. There is no way that anybody who endorsed Donald Trump is coming onto my show, and God knows I've tried. Okay, so I'm getting this question. What about going for the center and completely out of the box and throwing out Adam Kinzinger? That would be a groundbreaking ticket. Here's my stance on this, and I have a little bit of an aggressive stance on this. It's a good question, and I've gotten this question before. Definitely a valid question. I'm glad that it was posed. I believe that, in Democrats' ideal scenario, we have the suggestion that Kamala Harris should choose a Republican as VP. In Republicans' ideal scenario, Democrats can't even win an election. They will not allow them to win an election. So they have the most extreme Republicans. And so that's the asymmetry at play. My pitch here is that in our ideal scenario, we cannot basically offer a concession to Republicans. In this ideal scenario where we have the opportunity to make our case for the American people on issues where they agree with us, which is the issue of gun safety, on infrastructure, on healthcare, on climate, on reproductive rights. We are on the right side of those issues. We don't need to temper or moderate our stances on issues that we're popular on by bringing aboard a Republican. So this is a situation where we can go forward and bring great, accomplished, charismatic, well-spoken, articulate, strong Democrats and not basically kowtow to Republicans by bringing a Republican onto the ticket. We have to be proud of our agenda and our party and people who've done good work on the left, and that's something that we should embrace, not run away from, or not try to moderate by completely, capitulating to the right and saying, okay, well, we finally have the opportunity to lead in this country and bring forward a full unified Democratic ticket and hopefully control of both houses of Congress. and just immediately say, but let's bring a Republican on board. So that's my thoughts on that. I think that we have to be proud of our agenda, and it's the right agenda. It's the agenda that the vast majority of Americans support us on, and we cannot completely and immediately capitulate to the right by basically bringing in a Republican. We are on the right side of all of these issues, and we have to lean into the fact that we're on the right side of all of these issues. But a good question. What about Roy Cooper of North Carolina? My thoughts on Roy Cooper of North Carolina are the same thoughts about Andy Beshear. I think if we take Roy Cooper out of North Carolina right now, that we will have a tough time winning again in that state. And so I think if we have a popular governor of North Carolina, that we should that person should stay in the state, in the seat that they're in. And also, if we're talking about direct electoral implications of electing him, where do we have the best chance of winning? Is it with Roy Cooper in a state like North Carolina for Kamala Harris and the presidential ticket? Or if we're talking about the direct benefits conferred by a certain VP pick, is it some state like Pennsylvania where we have a better shot? Like what's more winnable in your opinion? Pennsylvania with Shapiro, Arizona with Mark Kelly, or North Carolina with Roy Cooper? North Carolina has been trending way more red than Arizona or Pennsylvania. So I think that if we're looking for electoral benefits of a person from a certain state, then we probably should look closer to the Pennsylvania or Arizona situation. But that's just my opinion. Do I feel that Trump forced Obama endorsement early with his press release? Do I feel that Trump forced the Obama endorsement early with his press release? So the thing about the Obama endorsement of Kamala Harris is he endorsed her the day after she announced. His endorsement was actually on July 24th. It wasn't released until July 26th. So Obama, like everybody else in the party, immediately came on board, was willing to endorse Kamala Harris. So I think that they tried to release it later for the same reason I just alluded to before. She was gaining a ton of endorsements. Obviously, the Obama endorsement is a big one. So they just kind of held their powder and knew that they could make some hay out of a new news cycle. And that's why they released it on the 26th. But let's be clear, he endorsed her on the 24th. He was part of that initial barrage of people who came forward and endorsed her. Would voters feel abandoned by their governor leaving to be VP, or do they just want to support them at the polls? I think the latter. I don't think anyone's gonna be upset that a politician is seeking higher office. I don't think anybody expects a politician to stay in any office if they can seek higher office. I think that just comes with the territory. And I think that they would reward them, in fact. I think that Pennsylvanians would love to see Josh Shapiro as VP. I think Arizonans would love to see Mark Kelly as VP. I think that North Carolinians would love to see Roy Cooper as VP. Any state is going to try and reward their home state people as they seek that promotion, because ultimately, especially as politics has become more nationalized, people want to see representation from people in their home state in the same way that anybody wants to root for people from their own people, right? Okay, I'm going to keep answering questions. I will take a quick moment just to do my one and only commercial during this live stream, and that is if you'd like to support my work beyond just subscribing to this channel, which is a great way already, and I would ask everybody watching right now, if you'd like to support this live stream or see future live streams, please make sure to subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. And also, I do have a book coming out called Shameless. It's available for pre-order right now. So if you'd like to support me, this is, that is also a great way to support what I do. The foreword was written by Jamie Raskin. I interviewed Pete Buttigieg for the book. Speaking of Pete, I also interviewed Al Franken, Mark Elias, Heather Cox Richardson, Jen Psaki, and a few other people, Dan Pfeiffer. So it's a great read. It's coming out in just a couple of weeks. I pinned the link right in the comment section. You can also just type in Shameless on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. If you want to support independent bookstores, you can go to bookshop.org. Again, that's bookshop.org, and the title is Shameless. And you can type in my name, Brian Tyler Cohen. So that's a great way to support what I do as well. And that is my one and only commercial. I know if you watch my content, you are probably tired of hearing me talk about it, but I'm very proud of the way the book came out, and so I'd love for people to watch it. And also, my lifelong dream is to hit the New York Times bestseller list, because That's what happens when you're an English major. That is the top of the mountain for English majors. So, okay. Why do you think Trump selected JD Vance? Do you think that he believed it would help him win, or was it just about the grift? For example, money from Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. I think it is C, all of the above. I think he certainly wants to benefit from that open checkbook from Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, even though Elon Musk walked back his purported $45 million a month donation. But in terms of the reason that he selected JD Vance, I think it's quite simple, actually. Donald Trump was running against Joe Biden at the time, and the polls were grim for Joe Biden. And so he saw that, and he saw that even states like New Mexico and Virginia were suddenly up for grabs. Minnesota were up for grabs. And if you're losing Minnesota and New Mexico as a Democrat, you're done. I mean, that election is all but over. And so at that point, Trump looked at that and said, I don't even need to pick somebody who's going to confer some added electoral advantage. I don't even need to choose somebody from a swing state, somebody of a different race or gender or religion, somebody who can offer some type of moderating force so that I can bring in other voters. He's like, I don't need that. I'm going to win this so handily. And I'm so cocky about it. I'm just going to pick somebody who's a carbon copy of me. And so he picks JD Vance because he's just another straight, white, Christian MAGA guy. And that's how certain he was that he was going to win and that he didn't even need to make any other inroads with any other voters. And so he just basically picked the heir apparent to the MAGA movement. And that's what he's grooming JD Vance to be. And of course, he did that before Joe Biden dropped out. But when Joe Biden drops out, all of a sudden it's an entirely different race. And Kamala Harris has closed the gap. Forget New Mexico and Minnesota and Virginia. Kamala Harris seems to have closed the gap in just about all of the states that she's running in, the battleground states that they're running in right now. Let me see if I can pull up some Fox News poll, for example. Let's see if we can pull up Fox News. I believe that we can pull up this graphic. Here we go. So this is just this week. Let's look at favorability ratings, which are an extremely important metric that voters are going to take into account. Kamala Harris is leading Donald Trump by 2 points in Wisconsin, by 3 points in Pennsylvania, by 8 points in Minnesota. Forget about Minnesota being on the map for Trump anymore. And by 10 points in Michigan. These are huge numbers right now. And favorability ratings are Donald Trump is underwater in his favorability ratings in all of these must-win battleground states. How is that going to translate when it comes time to voters to choose who they want to vote for? So these are the favorability ratings. Let's see if we can have if there is some indication of how the polling is going. I believe this is it. No, this is a Pennsylvania poll. Let's see. Yeah, it's a little tough to find the poll, but I mean, we can just look at this. This is a little old as well. Okay, well, I wasn't prepared for this one, so it doesn't look like we are going to get any numbers from the Fox News poll in terms of, let's see, in terms of what we're looking at here with Kamala Harris. But that's okay. That's okay because, those favorability ratings speak for themselves. The Fox News poll does show that Kamala Harris has basically wiped away the entirety of Donald Trump's lead that he had over Joe Biden in a bunch of battleground states. He is leading in a couple of states, but that's okay because where Donald Trump is leading right now, remember, this is after a big propaganda fest that was his gauzy RNC, and also after an assassination attempt. And so this is the ceiling for Trump. All of the sympathy points that he was able to get from the shooting, all of the points he was able to get from his big production that was the RNC, if he's not going to get any higher than that right now. And we do know, just from being in politics for so long, that Donald Trump's ceiling is roughly 47%. So as long as Kamala Harris can exceed that, then she is in absolutely good shape. And she might be a point or two behind him right now, but remember, we have 100 days to go, and already she's been effective enough to wipe away the massive deficit that Joe Biden had when he was just running against Trump. So we have good news on the horizon as far as that stuff is concerned. But that is what happens when for Donald Trump. It was a massive mistake for him to go forward and pick JD Vance when it was still possible for Joe Biden not to seek re-election. Should Harris endorse any other Democrats during her campaign? If so, who? Absolutely. Harris should endorse every battleground Democrat in the House, in the Senate. Democrats need to run toward each other. Democrats need to hug each other, not run away from anybody. Every person who wants to go out and vote for Kamala Harris, that's going to have major down ballot implications for Senate, House, state legislative races. Any lower race, any state legislator, for example, who garners a lot of grassroots enthusiasm is going to have up ballot support for House, Senate, and the presidency. So all of these candidates up and down the ballot need to get support from everybody, because the more support individual people on the ballots can garner, the more it helps everybody else on the ballot. So we should absolutely run toward people and hug people as opposed to running away from them. Adam Kinzinger has endorsed Joe Biden. Any word on him endorsing Kamala Harris? Do I think he will soon? I do think he will. He's probably just holding his powder so that he can learn a little bit more about her and maybe wait so that his endorsement will have a little bit more of an impact. I think that, I think that a lot of these people understand how media works and understand that if they wait a little bit and there's nothing else happening in the news, that maybe they get a little bit more attention. And I don't think any of these people who had been serving in Congress or now work in a television job are immune to the allure of a little bit of attention in the media. When am I going to run for office? I'm not going to run for office. That does not seem like it would be very fun for me. The main reason is I need to. I absolutely believe in the importance of building a big progressive media ecosystem. And, that's where the war is really fought between the left and the right. It is on the media. And I think that we're finally doing a good job in owning a lot of the narrative. But for a long time, it was just Fox News, Newsmax, OAN, Daily Wire, Steve Bannon's podcast, Rush Limbaugh, AM radio, and we were just getting killed on every platform, from Facebook to YouTube to TikTok. And I think Democrats are fighting back, but all of this underscores the importance of making sure that we have a robust presence in the media. What do I think of the new Trump is weird messaging? Is it more effective than Trump is dangerous? I think we need to take a see all of the above approach on that. I think that we have to continue hammering away at how Trump is dangerous, because one of the principal issues that voters care about is threats to democracy. But also in terms of the Trump is weird, I think it's great because, look, Kamala Harris is a very approachable person. Whoever she chooses for VP will likely be the same. And so I think that leaning into that and saying, like, look, these people are so weird, you wouldn't even want to sit next to them at a restaurant, far less have them run your country, is also an effective tack for people who might not be so receptive to the threat to democracy tack. I'll do a couple more questions here. Actually, what I'll do right now is I'll look at the poll. So it looks like the polling, as of right now, we have 23,000 votes. So I think that we definitely have enough to call it a sample size. It looks like, let's compare it to the initial poll that we ran. In the first poll, Tim Walz was at 20. He's at 20 again. Mark Kelly was at 43. Right now he's at 42. And Josh Shapiro was at 37. Now he's at 38. So not too different. A little bit of a move toward Josh Shapiro. So I'll end this poll right now. For people who are watching live, obviously you were able to be able to vote in person. For people who are watching after the live broadcast, you won't be able to vote, but those were the results of the poll. Right now it has Mark Kelly leading with 42% of the vote, Josh Shapiro in a very close second with 38% of the vote, and Walz in third place with 20% of the vote. The reason that I chose those three and didn't include Andy Beshear, Pete Buttigieg, and the others is because we've been talking about this Bloomberg reporting that suggests that Kamala Harris has zeroed in on three candidates, Kelly, Shapiro, and Walz. So take it with a grain of salt. There is the ultimate caveat that, the media can report whatever the media wants to report, and it may not necessarily be accurate, but I think it was worth discussing some of what we were reading today. So, okay, let's do one more question, and then we will call it, because I need to watch some Olympic coverage right now. What do I think of the report of a large golf cart rally for Kamala Harris in the Villages in Florida, even though a lot of them were big supporters of Trump? Look, I think that is a great microcosm of where this race is going. Clearly, the momentum is in Kamala Harris's favor. For example, there was a Reuters Ipsos poll that just came out a few days ago that showed Kamala Harris leading Donald Trump by 2 points, 42 to 44. That same poll with Donald Trump and Kamala Harris from 2 weeks earlier had them tied, and the previous poll from the beginning of July had Trump leading by 1. That shows that the momentum is clearly in Kamala Harris's favor. When we start seeing golf cart parades in the Villages like a hotbed of Trump support. So when we start seeing support for Kamala Harris in the Villages, that is just an indication of basically how much organic enthusiasm there is for this campaign. And that's, of course, to say nothing of the fact that she's raised over $200 million. Talk about the a cash benefit that Donald Trump had going into this month of July against Donald Trump. Now, I mean, Kamala Harris has blown Donald Trump out of the water in terms of fundraising. She will have a $200 million advantage. You know what that means? That means that she can open field offices in places that Democrats should have no business opening field offices, and really trying to get votes from people where we wouldn't otherwise be able to get them. That means we can go on the air and start making our case to the American people in ads where people might not have otherwise have seen them. That means that we can earlier define our opponent, for example, like JD Vance and Donald Trump, and talk about how JD Vance is weird, and also how Donald Trump is weird, and also how Donald Trump is an idiot who thinks that World War II already hasn't happened yet, and who thinks that Nikki Haley was in charge of the Capitol on January 6th, and who thinks that Hannibal Lecter was a real person and also a great American, and who thinks that that Nikki, you know the list. I mean, that an issue that one of the biggest issues facing Americans is the fact that we don't have better water pressure when we flush our toilets, and that windmills are killing birds and whales every single day. The list goes on, right? But it allows us to define our opponent earlier. And that's a spot that Republicans have historically had a huge advantage of. They can come in and say, look, Democrats are XYZ. Democrats want to pass Obamacare. What is Obamacare? It means that you'll have death panels. A lot of you watching right now remember the 2008 race where when we spoke about Obamacare, the Republicans framed Obamacare, which is just expanding access to healthcare in this country, as meaning that a panel of people would be able to decide whether you lived or died. The irony of which is that now that these abortion bans have passed, you literally have judges deciding whether women who have fatal genetic conditions, whose fetuses have fatal genetic conditions, get to have abortions or not, even though those abortions may very well determine whether they get to live or die. So the ultimate irony of these Republicans having run against the prospect of death panels back in 2010 is that right now they are responsible for literal death panels. You'll remember that Kate Cox, a woman from Texas whose fetus had a fatal genetic condition called trisomy 18, she was granted an exception for the state's abortion ban. Ken Paxton, the state's AG, appealed it up to the Texas Supreme Court, and they overturned the exemption. And not only did having this fetus put her future fertility at risk, but it put her own life at risk. And so she had to flee the state because these judges in Texas made a decision based on this woman's health. They are not doctors. They are ideologues who were appointed by, who were farmed from like groups like the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society to sit on that bench to impose their Christo-fascist theocratic edicts onto people, and that's exactly what they did. So exactly what they were warning about with Obamacare is what they brought to fruition with these abortion bans across the country. So it is very important that Democrats have this monetary advantage to be able to define the danger of our opponent right now, and that's exactly what we're able to do. So having these golf cart rallies in a place like Florida is a microcosm of the enthusiasm that we're seeing across the country right now for Kamala Harris, and it will continue. And if we're seeing that in a place like the Villages in Florida, again, a hotbed of Trump support, then you better believe that we're seeing it in places that aren't hotbeds of Trump support, like Georgia and Nevada and Arizona and Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. So all of this is good news, and I think that's a good point to leave off on. So again, one last appeal for those who watched, who enjoyed my coverage. If you want to support the work that I do and also see future live streams, please make sure to subscribe to this channel. Again, it doesn't cost you anything to do that. I'll never put my content behind a paywall. And if you want to further support my work, you can check the pinned comments in the comment section and pre-order my book, Shameless. You can either click the link there or go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, bookshop.org to support indie bookshops. Again, that's bookshop.org. And just type in Shameless. All right, everybody, thank you so much. I'm going to end the live stream now, but I will use, I don't have my thanks for watching screen yet, so I'm going to be right back, but this is it for me. I'm going to watch the Olympics. So thank you all for watching, and probably do another live stream tomorrow, so I will see you then. Thanks.